The Hornets start the season off with a win, a big test in week 2. Hello, everybody. Terry Bennett here on the Muenster Hornet Football Show, right here on L4 Media. As the Hornets dispatched Lake Country Christian last week, dominating 61-7, though falling behind 7-0 at one point. But after that, the offense got going. Great game by Case and Carney. Ran for 114, had 2 touchdowns, threw for 116 and a touchdown. Nolan Peel had a big day with a couple of scores and 120 yards. And as Coach will talk about in the interview, also doing it efficiently. Carney completed 81% of his passes. He only ran 11 times. Nolan only ran 11 times. So a really good, efficient, offensive, dominating performance. The defense was great. The touchdown that they gave up was after a fumble gave, I think they're the Eagles. Yeah, the Eagles, great field position, and they punched it in. But now it's a big test. Holiday, of course, last year was a great game. Holiday won 49-35 in a game that saw a couple of weird things happen against Muenster, a pick six, a kickoff return for a touchdown. That's your spread right there. You take those 2 mistakes away, and we're talking about a tied game. And I think it's going to be a lot like that this year as well. Yes, Holiday's having to kind of reload. They lost their great quarterback, Jones, who graduated, and they lost some graduation on the line. And they're not the normal Holiday offensive line, but they're still a really solid offensive line. And then their defense is going to be a work in progress. But Holiday still has the talent. They just don't have the experience. I got to talk about last week, by the way, folks. So sorry about the sound. So I was using a podcast enhancement program to help kind of clean up the noise. And we do this. I'm recording Thursday at 9 a.m. And I record the shows through the week, and we've decided that Thursday is going to be Coach's Show Thursday. So I record the interview, and then I do the intro like I'm doing now, and then I'll edit the show, and I'll put it up. And last week, we were going to Garrison for the first week of the season. We always go to a Thursday game, so that always makes the Thursday of the first week a little weird. And so I was pushing these out, wasn't even paying attention to what they were being said, just pushing them out, posting them, pushing them out, and post them. And then I start getting a lot of comments about the coaches sounding weird. Somebody even said something on the YouTube channel on this show specifically. And I listened for about 5 seconds because I was just making sure the volume was good. I'm like, well, it sounded great. I don't understand the problem. I even commented that on the thread. Well, then I got home and then started talking to the other coaches I do shows with who had people reach out to them. And they said it sounded really, really weird. So I went back and listened. And yes, it did sound really, really weird. I do apologize for that. We will not be using that podcast enhancement system anymore for these coaches show. I don't know what it had something to do with, maybe over the phone, because I use it for other stuff that's in studio and had no issues. But anyway, this one will be a better sounding one. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, it's the head coach of the Muenster Hornets, Coach Brady Carney, right here on the Muenster Football Show on L4 Media. Here at L4 Media, we talk high school football, 4A, 3A, and 2A in Texas. We talk East Texas sports. We talk NFL, guy talk, movie and booze. We also talk wrestling and so much more. And you can see it all on our YouTube channel at L4 Media Company. Like and subscribe. Terry Bennett back here on the Muenster Football Show. Now joined by the head coach of the Hornets, Coach Brady Carney. And, Coach, congratulations. You start the season off with a convincing win. What were your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, like I told you a while ago, I thought they played I thought they had some good schemes. I thought their coaches did some things we haven't seen on film, some good play action stuff, played their defense a little bit different than what we had seen last year and then this year. Thought their scheme was really good. I thought they had some kids. All their kids were playing hard. We got good depth, and I felt like I could see the momentum change towards the end of the second quarter when our depth took over and they didn't have as much. And then, of course, into the second half, it kind of became a blowout. But I thought they played us really well for a quarter and a half. And we came out and did some good things, but I think we had a 3rd and 1 from the 1 or something, and Casey kind of bobbled the snap, dropped it. They got us for a tackle for loss, and then maybe we missed a field goal or something. I can't remember. But, overall, I thought defensively we played really well, swarmed the football, did some good things. We had one bust in the back end that left the guy open, which they scored on. Offensively, thought we did some good things here and there. We got to shore up our tackles, our offensive line. Our edge blocking wasn't great, but it had something to do with the defense they were in. And then we got to get better at our tight end position, our wing position. But that's all stuff we can get better at. We got a lot of games in front of us to do that.
Well, as you speak, you have a lot of games, and then we've talked about this part before of the game, but like with Kaysen and Nolan Pill and them having good games, where do you balance out of this is the beginning of the season and they need to see some snaps to also I don't want them getting hurt in a meaningless game late into it? How do you balance that out as a coach?
Well, I told you this earlier, maybe another interview I had, but I really feel like we have good depth. We really do for a 2A school. I hate to even call our second group twos because some of those guys would definitely be playing at other schools our size all the time. Wouldn't come off the field. So I hate to call them our twos, but those guys that are behind our starters, man, I don't blink at putting them in a football game and giving them opportunities. And that's one of those things that we did last week. And I'm probably going to do even more with some of those guys is just try to give them as many breaks as I can, as often as I can. And I think our depth will take over in the second half. Cause like I said, we've got good depth, but Kaysen gets his breaks on defense because we got Clayton Cunningham that come in and play the free safety just like Kaysen. Nolan can take some breaks on offense because we got Legend Bounds. Garrett Hess can take some breaks on defense because we got Dustin Croft, and the list goes on. But our depth is key. And as far as, we do have a hit chart for our running backs and our receivers and stuff. And we're going to do our best to spread the ball around and not get Case and Nolan and Dustin Legend. Hopefully they all can come out of a game with 8 to 10 carries and we can spread the ball around and keep the physicality and the hits off of them. So if that makes sense.
Is this your deepest team you've had at Munster?
I think so. As far as our depth and our numbers, we had 63 come out. I don't think we ever crossed the 60s before. And we carry, I'll be honest with you, I think we carried 30, 31 on the varsity and about the same on the JV. So yes, I do believe that this is the deepest team we've had as far as every position. We got depth at every position. We got a guy behind somebody that can come in and can contribute.
Speaking of, before we move on next week, how did JV start the season?
Man, we went over to Van Alstyne on Thursday and played their freshmen. And they came out with maybe a 33-21 win, something like that. Our JV's pretty solid. We got a good freshman class and a few sophomores down there on that team that can play a little bit. So they should be a really competitive team all year, and they went over and played Van Alstyne last week and came away with the win as well.
I think that's one thing a lot of fans might not know, or if they're older like me. And when I played, you just played like whoever you played that week, you played their JV and their ninth grade and stuff. It's a little different now, especially when you're playing like a private school. Sometimes y'all have to find other games for the JV. How hard is that?
Man, it's all of us coaches around here, we got a big text message group, of course, and then you can post on different websites where you're looking for games. But yeah, so, for us, like this week, we all have a holiday. We start junior high, 7th, 8th, and JV and varsity have holiday. Next week, Windthorst only has one junior high, so I had to pick up Alvord 7th for my 7th grade, and then 8th and JV varsity will play Windthorst. And we're usually pretty good because we have to schedule the bigger schools early. But when we get into district, we may get to, let's say, Chico, for example. They may only have one junior high, no JV, and not a 7th grade team. So, there's times where we've had to send 3 different teams to 3 different places, and that's just part of it. We're going to do whatever we can to get our kids playing time. But, yeah, we may have to send 2 coaches to Alvord, 2 to Windthorst, and 2 to Collinsville. You just never know when we get into district who's going to have teams by that point as far as 7th, 8th, and JV.
All right, well, let's move on to the Holiday Eagles. You keep talking about that depth. It will be tested against 3A Division II Eagles. Last year, if I remember correctly, it was a high-scoring game, but there was also like a kick return for a touchdown and a couple special teams mistakes. But when you're looking at the film this year, what are your thoughts on Holiday?
Yeah, like you mentioned last year, we gave up a kick return, and then we had a pick six. We were running a screen, what we call a flat screen, and Kaysen didn't see the linebacker. Linebacker did a great job keying up on the running back and stepped in front and had a pick six. So, I think the score was maybe 45-30, something like that. It was a 2-touchdown game, and we, our mistakes gave them 2. But, when I pop on this year's film, Holiday's just different as far as, the Hunter Jones kid is not a quarterback. The Parker Jones kid is not a linebacker. Number 2, I can't remember his name, exceptional wideout. So they've lost some really good pieces, but Holiday's such a rich tradition school. They're so, you're always going to look up and see Holiday battling in the third and fourth round in football. They do such a good job. Coach Atwood's come in and done a great job after Coach Johnson left. But those kids are always going to compete hard. But I see a team right now that is got some kids playing that maybe didn't contribute as much last year. So it's going to take them a little while to get going. I'm not saying they're not as good as last year. I'm just saying that they do have some new pieces in there, and eventually they're going to be very, very good football team. And right now, I do think they're getting to that point, but they are replacing some good pieces. So I see a team that's trying to find their identity a little bit. Coach Atwood will definitely find it probably this week against us, if I was guessing. But man, they throw it around the yard, play good defense, got fast, skilled kids, and just a really well-coached football team. And they're just going to consistently get better each week.
Well, you bring up the point of, a lot of guys taking their snaps for the first time last year under the varsity lights. And I've always been told by coaches that week 1 to week 2 jump is one of the bigger jumps. And it's game 2 when you start to see the talent of that youth start to really show.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that, because I thought last year, even though we lost the Holiday, I think our kids and our coaches came away seeing that we had some young kids that would battle a little bit, and could fight a little bit, and they never gave up. And, I do believe that you're right on that. I think that's sometimes the biggest jump you see is just from the first game to the second game. Those kids see the speed of the game. They get used to it a little bit, and they'll constantly get better throughout the year. But I do think that's the biggest jump you usually see is from game 1 to game 2.
Here at L4 Media, we talk high school football, 4A, 3A, and 2A in Texas. We talk East Texas sports. We talk NFL, guy talk, movie and booze. We also talk wrestling and so much more. And you can see it all on our YouTube channel at L4 Media Company. Like and subscribe.
As always, I want to thank the head coach of the Hornets, Brady Carney, for joining us here. Going to be an interesting game this week. Again, last year it was a great game, 49-35. The Eagles outlasted Muenster. I think this is, as he has talked about the depth of Muenster this year, I think this is a great depth testing game. You'll get the same thing here in a couple weeks against Pottsboro. And I don't mean it like you don't want to win, but the idea is you're going in there to play teams that are deeper, bigger, faster. And then that way, when you get to the playoffs, and even in district with Collinsville and Lindsay this year, people need to watch out for Lindsay. When you get into district against them and then eventually into the playoffs with the region, you're going to be better acclimated for that. Now, this year, I do think there's a legitimate chance that Muenster beats Holiday a little bit more than last year. In fact, I had last year that's about a 14-point game, and that's what it ended up turning out. I think this is more like a 7-point game. I think it's going to be a little bit lower scoring. Not only because I think Muenster's defense is 1 year better, but again, Holiday's having to reload on offense. And then I think for Muenster offensively, I think it's, as he kind of talked about, it's about being efficient here early in the season. You want to get your reps in for your studs, but you also want to get them off the field, have them rested, and then allowing you to work that depth that if you feel you have this depth, well, then we're going to use the depth. All right, I want to remind everybody, if you have any questions, thoughts, or comments, you can email me, Terry at s2ssport.com. And until next week, this has been the Muenster Football Show right here on L4 Media.